to have a bigger impact on the construction industry, I needed to join the technology side of things. My dad's a carpenter, and one of the things that he loves is if there's things that go wrong in your house, it's like kind of his love language to come and help you fix it. People see construction as a dirty job, right? But it's not until you realize that there's a housing shortage, right? Who's going to build your homes? AI is not going to build your homes. And a college educated person is also not going to build your home. Like, who's going to build your home? So it's either going to be robots manufacturing or you need skilled labor, right? In the US is there's been such a big emphasis on this 4-year university thing. And there's a lot of people paying all this money to go to college, and coming out, they're going to be making a lot less money than some of these construction workers.
Welcome back to the Contech OnSite podcast. This podcast is dedicated to the innovators and the pioneers shaping the future of the construction industry. Can you please start by introducing yourself and telling us about Brick Mortar Ventures?
Eliyahu, thanks for having me on the podcast. I'm Alice Leung. I am an investor at Brick Mortar Ventures. My journey actually started in construction. I used to work for DPR Construction, building hospitals and data centers. During my time in industry, really gravitated towards the technology and innovation side of things. So my background was always in operations, but loved working with a lot of the early construction technology startups that were getting founded at the same time when I entered the industry. So when it came time to figure out what was going to be my impact on the space, I actually thought that to have a bigger impact on the construction industry, I needed to join the technology side of things. And it was really through those conversations that got me the opportunity to join Brick Mortar Ventures. So Brick Mortar Ventures was founded back in 2015 by Darren Bechtel. Right now, we're a team of, I would say, 6.5. So 6 full-time, 1 venture partner, global presence. And we invest in early stage construction technology companies. And I'd like to say that we were probably the first one that was founded. I'd like to also mention that we've done over 40 investments out of our 2 funds, and we have 15 companies that have gone through the Formwork Labs Accelerator program. So that's focused on the pre-seed stage. So we focus on pre-seed, seed, Series A, and yeah, we love construction tech, and that includes the design part of the process through construction and operations and maintenance. And this is across all of the different asset classes. So from single family residential to commercial real estate, oil and gas, mining, civil infra. So we believe that process is pretty similar across all of these different industries. And there are a lot of opportunities for technology companies to expand across market verticals or go more deeply within the vertical.
As you said, Brick and Mortars is probably one of the first funds out there to purely focus on construction tech. What drove you guys? What made you guys do it? Everybody else is sitting on the sidelines. What made you guys jump in?
So I think it's a little bit of a funny story. So like I mentioned, Darren Bechtel's our founder, managing director, and he started his career in investing, doing super angel investing. And at that time, he was a generalist, mostly investing in a lot of his classmates out of Stanford GSB. And when it came time and he realized that what he really wanted to do was work with entrepreneurs and do venture capital. So what Darren realized was some of his best performing portfolio companies were actually in the construction technology space. And I think for him, what he realized was him having grown up around the family business, having worked at an architecture firm and seeing the construction industry from multiple angles, he saw that his knowledge of the industry plus a lot of the relationships that he had in industry were actually a competitive advantage for some of these companies. And that's been built into the brick and mortar DNA. So all of my teammates at the fund, we all have some type of firsthand relationship with the construction industry. So I used to work for a general contractor. Kostub did forensic structural engineering. Curtis used to work for Hewitt. Austin, though he has more of a traditional finance background, he grew up around his family's land development business. So he provides insight from that. Darren, of course, Bechtel, Guillaume also worked at Bone Structure, so more on the kind of startup side on construction. And he has a really unique nuclear engineering background. And then our newest venture partner, Adi, he doesn't have firsthand experience in the construction industry, but he was leading product at PlanGrid through the Autodesk acquisition. So he's helping bring a lot more of that like tech product mindset around construction tech. So all of us have either worked in industry or worked really closely with the industry. And I think we got recruited to brick and mortar to help change the industry in some sense. I know this sounds really cheesy, but I feel like I didn't know anything about venture capital when I joined, but I knew that I wanted to help change the industry in a positive way through the use of technology. And this was a way for me to do that. And if you get to meet any of my other teammates, they all have similar stories where, they saw the frustrations, they felt the frustrations of the construction industry. And this is really our kind of avenue to be able to give back and work with the industry on, technology and innovation.
Okay, so that's really interesting. And I love how the story kind of evolved, really investing and through his understanding of what a strategic and partner can do for startups, kind of gotten more involved and see that it could generate a good return, and he gets involved and he builds up a fund, and that fund has a lot of ripple effects across the industry. And now how each one of you guys are driven with this passion to change the industry. So I have two questions. One, would you encourage other investors to start getting involved in the industry? Because as number one, would you inspire them and say it's a good path to go? And I guess another question is, are you seeing a change in the industry? So you've been around now for quite a while. Are you seeing there actual change happening?
Yeah, so we are actively trying to recruit other investors to join us in this journey. And I think part of it is, I think construction is everywhere, but people maybe just from everyday life, you just skip over construction in a sense that if you're walking down the street and someone's doing roadwork construction, right? I think my opinion or my guess is maybe people see it as a nuisance, or, oh, that's really annoying. What is this jackhammering? Why is it so loud? Oh, I hate construction. Or something in your home breaks or you don't do maintenance. Like all of that is construction. And I feel like part of it is there's almost been this like negative view on construction. And it's almost because it's so part of everyday life, it's like almost taken for granted. That's how I feel. So I feel like a lot of people are just not aware of how big the construction industry is, how many people they deploy. Usually for governments around the world, anytime there's some type of recession, there's always government stimulus that goes into construction because it employs such a big portion of the workforce. It's a big portion of the GDP. And I feel like it's just been overlooked because it is one of those industries that I think don't make it into a lot of news articles and that type of stuff, unless if there's something bad that's happened. So the interesting thing is over the last couple of years, especially with the pandemic, I think the pandemic actually helped create this almost appreciation for frontline workers. And construction people were part of that frontline workforce that I think the pandemic really helped appreciate. And you realize that, when there's a global pandemic, the only people that are working are, the healthcare staff, I think grocery stores and construction. Like a lot of my construction friends, they worked throughout the entire pandemic. So I think there's just been a lot of recent news about that. We got to give credit to the McKinsey article that talks about how construction is the second least digitized industry in the world, because to VCs and investors, that should be, oh, that's a lot of dollars should go into there to digitize, right? I feel like it's only been in the last 5 years or so that we've seen a lot of this, I would say, new press education around the construction industry. Procore IPO was also a really good thing to put construction tech on the map. Katerra, even though that was a negative one, I think that also helped put construction tech on the map. So it's really only been fairly recently. But the way that we look at it is our fund two is a $130 million fund, still a fairly small fund. But what we're seeing is there's a lot more construction technology startups popping up around the world, and we do need more capital going into this space. So we always welcome collaboration with other VCs. We're always happy to trade notes, always happy to share. This is how we see the industry. And we strive to be the experts on construction tech, all early stage construction tech. So yeah, always looking for other funds to collaborate with. And then now I forgot your second question.
It's okay. I'm loving it. And I really think that it's interesting to hear that there's still such a need, and we're only at the beginning of this, right? So there's actually a ton of opportunity. But I'll segue into the next question, which is, We're talking about a massive blue ocean, right? Why hasn't it blown up already? What needs to happen in the industry? And have you seen change actually happen throughout you working with the construction industry and in brick and mortar?
Yes, I think the interesting thing with construction is I feel like there needs to be some type of external factor that kind of forces change, because the challenge with technology construction is it's a very fragmented market. And, Procore IPO'd, but it still took them 20 years to get there, right? And a lot of it was organic growth because selling into the industry is really hard. Go to market is really hard. And especially like the long tail, if you look at residential construction, there's a lot of construction companies that are sub 5-person teams, sub 10-person teams, right? And they may be online, but they're not on LinkedIn. So your typical kind of B2B SaaS B2B SaaS marketing tactics, those don't work. A lot of the construction workforce, they do not have a digital presence. Like finding workers for construction, like it's a guy who knows a guy, or it's Craigslist, or it's all of these. Through our accelerator program and how we work with our portfolio companies, like we tell them to market and to sell to construction. It's almost like thinking about how do you do this before the internet existed, because none of the like internet related tactics really work for construction. So I think there's a lot of challenges with that, but in the past we have seen a couple of like big unlocks, right? The invention of the iPad, right? And I give a lot of credit to Apple and the iPad, because there are a lot of other tablets out there, but the iPad is very user-friendly. And at the time, it was very easy to build apps for the iPad. So that was, I think, one key technology that really helped unlock connecting the field and the office, because now you were able to bring digital drawings out into the field, and you no longer needed to print out these big sets, 46 by, I think it's like 46 by 34 or whatever, these big plans out on site to go look for information. So that was one unlock. And then during the pandemic, we actually heard that the biggest thing that the pandemic changed was actually the adoption of Microsoft Teams, because a lot of construction companies used the Microsoft suite. And that was one big driver for getting just a lot more people online and being able to do virtual meetings and chat and really go from calling and texting people to a chat interface with your colleagues. So obviously the next thing that we're waiting for, what is it going to be? The big driver is probably going to be the skilled labor shortage. And construction companies have talked about this for a long time now. This was a topic when I was still in the construction industry. There's a skilled labor shortage coming, but I don't think it really hit until fairly recently. So now contractors are trying to figure out, like, how do we do all this work that we've won when there's not enough labor? And what does that kind of force us into looking at? And I think there's obviously a couple areas of interest. There's any type of automation, whether that's office-based AI workflow automation or construction robotics, or new tools and equipment, or better use of prefabrication. There's construction companies that are doing vertical integration. So I think there's a lot of different kind of things that people can try to tap into to help with, I would say, alleviating that skilled labor shortage.
Okay, so we're entering a whole new topic, which I find fascinating. Labor shortage to me, for some reason, feels like it's very underrated. Meaning there are a lot of companies that are talking about this as an issue, but I don't see a lot of companies taking action to actually deal with what's going on. It seems like the tactic is let's find more labor, even though that might be a solution, but for the near future, it doesn't look like it's going to be. Are you seeing any companies taking action, or who are you seeing in the market?
It's been a thing in the industry for a little while, but it wasn't like talked about at every conference. There haven't been like news articles about it. But I think a lot of the trades have known that. And that was one of the first drivers for prefabrication. So I think it was probably the steel trades that started leveraging BIM VDC, and that kind of drove the adoption of BIM VDC, right? So like, in order to prefabricate, you need 3D modeling. So we saw that trend maybe 10 to 20 years ago, where there was BIM VDC adoption, not just for coordination, but for the trades. It was, I need to prefabricate because I want to make more money. I don't have enough labor, whatever it is. Business driven decision. So it was like steel. And then I think there's a lot more MEPs that started doing that. And one of our really good kind of friends of the fund, Jake Olson, who runs Stratus, they've seen a ton of pickup on using their technology. They got a lot of adoption because a lot of the mechanical, electrical, plumbing trades, they're now looking at prefabrication because of all the like chip manufacturing work, data center work. So there's a lot of industrial work happening right now that's pushing for that prefabrication. And that's within the last couple of years. So I would say like some of the ways that contractors have been tackling skilled labor is, yeah, prefabrication. Now we're seeing a lot more interest in construction robotics. So construction robotics in general is still fairly new. I would say there's not just a handful of companies, but there's maybe one or two companies trying to figure out like which scope within construction they should go after. And each of those different scopes, there may be like one or two trying to build something to go tackle it. Of course, depending on the scope, there's varying kind of maturity for that. We are seeing a lot more contractors interested in adopting construction robotics because those robotics companies, I think the way that you position it in industry is that it's a new piece of equipment. Because those pieces of equipment are actually augmenting the workforce. So there aren't, any robotics companies that are fully replacing the human, but they're allowing the human to do more planning, to do other tasks, while the robot does some of the mundane work that the human doesn't even really want to do. So yeah, I would say there's definitely some tactics on the like just augmenting the workforce side. And then we are seeing a couple of groups that are trying to figure out how do we change the way that people look at construction and kind of market. It's almost like marketing the construction industry to the next generation to figure out how do we make it cool, right? Whether it's showing the next generation that, hey, by the way, if you join an apprenticeship program, you actually start making money from day one. And you're not paying to go to school. Instead, like the school is paying you kind of thing. And this is very like US focus on the apprenticeship program. And there are folks like Max Sanchez, who is working on a new charter school. And he wants to build a charter school that is basically for the next generation of builders. And he wants to incorporate a lot of technology, robotics into that curriculum so that when the people graduate from that high school, they have the necessary like interest skills to basically join what does the future construction company look like, right? That next gen construction company will be leveraging a lot of technology, will have prefab, will be leveraging robotics. Yeah, there definitely are people working on trying to figure out how do we either increase the pipeline of people joining the construction industry, or figuring out how do we encourage people to maybe change their skill set or think about the construction industry as like another industry option, right? We're seeing construction companies are hiring data scientists. They're hiring like a lot more folks on the IT side of things, knowing that especially with AI coming, you need to figure out how do you structure your data so that you can leverage those technologies. So I'll take a pause there. There's a lot of stuff.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack over here. There are so many reasons to run after prefab, to prefabricating, and that's actually interesting. And how you loop that into, okay, to prefab, we need to go and we have to create 3D models, and how these ripple effects happen. Because I wouldn't connect those lines in such an obvious way, and so I find that to be really interesting. And also kind of the way that you're talking about the construction companies trying to market, or they need to start marketing the trades or the skill trades to all these young people to enter the industry. It's interesting because how many people know that I think like there's a pretty bad rep out there for the industry. There's a pretty bad rep when it comes to you working in the industry or being a trade worker. I was talking to someone a week ago or so, and we're just saying, as a trade worker, I love what I'm doing. I'm passionate about my job, I'm making money, I'm living a good life. University graduates might be making less money than me. And for some reason we get such a bad rep. Like what's going on? What do you think is the cause? There's enough people in the world to do the jobs. What's the cause? Why aren't people entering the industry?
So I think it definitely is this like negative view of the industry. And I went to a 4-year university. I got a Bachelor of Science degree, and my starting salary on as a project engineer was less than what an apprentice was making. Granted, this is like the San Francisco Bay Area, but the guys in the trades were making a lot more money than I was. And I think a lot of people just don't know that. I think it's like an educational thing. Obviously, when it comes to construction, there's varying levels of skill set, varying levels of the trades, right? If you are a laborer, depending on what type of laborer it is, that pay is definitely a lot lower than, say, a certified electrician. And it does, require time for you to get the credentials to build up in your career for that big pay. But I think a lot of people still are unaware, and they just associate construction is low pay, unskilled labor. And I think that's maybe what has been what a lot of the everyday people may be closer to interacting with or working with or whatever, right? A lot of people see construction as a dirty job, right? But it's not until you realize that there's a housing shortage, right? Who's going to build your homes? AI is not going to build your homes. And a college educated person is also not going to build your home. Like, who's going to build your home? So it's either going to be robots manufacturing, or you need skilled labor, right?
Probably hand, right? Right.
Exactly. It's all of that. And I think one big issue, especially in the US, is there's been such a big emphasis on this 4-year university thing. And there's a lot of people paying all this money to go to college, and coming out, they're going to be making a lot less money than some of these construction workers. But I think that's just what society has sold you, is that you have to get a 4-year degree to be able to come out into society and have a career and make money. So I think in some sense, it's almost been like just a negative impact in this bigger picture of the American dream and whatever you want to call it. And I think it is really sad, because it's my dad's a carpenter, and one of the things that he loves is if there's things that go wrong in your house, it's like kind of his love language to come and help you fix it. I feel like this next generation is going to be a lot of people who don't have handy skills, and it's what's going to happen when your toilet, if you have an issue where your toilet's backed up, right? Like, you're gonna have to go call a plumber, but there aren't going to be enough plumbers out there. And then
They say necessity is the mother of innovation. So people are gonna have to start learning it, but it's really interesting, because even today, entering the trades, there are a lot of people out there who love their job, and people who don't want to sit in an office all day. When you're on the trades, you're with a team, you're with people, you're breathing air, you get your hands a bit dirty, but it's not getting dirty in an nasty way. It's the way getting dirty of feeling alive, touching earth, like being connected to things, looking, understanding the mechanics of stuff. People, naturally, you see a lot of people have a passion for this. And I think that there's also, it's also being really overlooked, the potential of how much money can be made, not only from the fact that you'll be a trade worker, but also there is such a demand. Anyone entering the space today could build up a company and easily find a lot of jobs. And if you build a company and with time you grow it, you're going to be doing just as well as anybody else. And at the same time, I'm going to be sincere, and I'll ask myself, would I skip my college degree and do it? I'm not sure I'm the right, but I'll be honest. I'm not as handy as I'd like to be. It took me like an hour to put just shelves from IKEA together. So I'll be honest that I have friends there who work amazing with wood. Just give them something within 2 minutes. Like, even if they're just sitting on the corner, I have a friend, anytime I bring him over for drinks, he doesn't even drink the whiskey. He just goes right over to something, he just starts tapping it, fixing it. Next thing I know, I don't need an electrician. I don't need anybody. The guy just solved all my problems. But
that's a good friend.
I know. I keep on trying to invite him, but he's so busy because everybody else is inviting him. I have to wait online and just come over and do drinks with me. But I am really saying out there for the people in the industry, the people in high school, even to just learn it. I think there's a lot of discipline that you learn in these trades, even if you don't do it for your entire life, but doing it as someone young. But that's interesting. I still think that there's a massive marketing issue. Why aren't the reason people aren't entering the trades is And also, I think that the construction industry might be contributing, to it. And we were talking before. Yeah, and I'd love to hear from you, like, what do you see? And how can the construction industry make its offering for young people more appealing?
There's definitely a cultural change that needs to happen. A lot of people don't know this, but I think the industry with the highest rate of suicides is construction. It's either number one or number two. And I think a lot of that is the culture of construction where it is this kind of macho man culture, right? It's, oh, I can pick up the rebar. And that's probably been perpetuated over a really long time, right? There is this kind of culture where you don't ask for help, you just tough it out. And it is very stressful. A lot of construction workers, they travel for work, they're on the road hours a day, and it is a tough job, and you're there working really hard, and it is really hard on your body. And I think that is one thing where I am very hopeful that with construction robotics, new equipment, like you are taking a lot of that physically stressful work out of it. And yeah, it's like all of these things come together. And I think that's why it is still very hard. Even the folks who like working with their hands and they're really good with their job, there's probably similar to climbing the corporate ladder in law or in finance or whatever it is, there is still bureaucracies and bullshit and egos and like all this stuff. So construction industry still sees a lot of that. And frankly, the way that I grew up, I said my dad is a carpenter. He told all of his children, go get a college degree so that you do not have to do work that is so physical on your body. And like, I'm seeing this now where my dad has back pain. He's got pains all over his body, and it is from working in construction. So part of the reality is it is still tough on your body, especially if you don't learn the ergonomics, you don't do all this stuff. So I'm sure there's a part of it where people don't want to do the hard work and they don't want to do the labor. So I feel like there's just so many little things that kind of drive people into thinking like why I don't want to do construction. But over the last 20, 30, 40 years, OSHA has continued to put an emphasis on worker safety. I think there's a lot more construction companies that safety is number one priority. Whether or not they put money where their mouth is, that's a whole other thing. But it is an emphasis that we need to make sure that people are doing work ergonomically. There's more equipment, there are more tools. So I am like, that's why
I want to build, if you don't mind, I'll build off on that point of today's industry or the future industry with the technology being introduced. Can this industry or can construction companies via technology or with technology make the industry a lot more appealing? And if so, how?
We have to. It's the only way. This is a really bad article that I'm referencing, but I remember seeing an article where it's like 1 in 4 Gen Z wants to be TikTok influencers, right? So it's like, there's so much, like the cool thing right now is to be an influencer, to work in tech, to do all this stuff. And then when you look at an industry like construction, it's not tech, right? It's not, construction companies don't have good websites either. There are little things where it's like, the construction companies don't even know how to like brand and market themselves to the next generation, right? So there's an opportunity there. But beyond that, the industry as a whole needs to use the latest technology. There are like people who are graduating college today. And actually, even when I joined, and this was like 15 years ago, you look at the technologies that you're using on the construction site, and it looks like it's Windows 95. You compare that with any modern UI website that you may be doing day to day, Uber, like whatever it is, right? Like you just compare and contrast, and it's like you join this industry, you see the tech and how old it is, and then immediately you're like, why am I here? This is not cool. So even if it's as simple as like refreshing the website and refreshing the UI on some of this tech, I think that will change a lot of the branding around the industry, even if it's really old tech on the back end. But if it looks nice and modern, I think that at least makes it feel a little bit more tech.
I think it's pretty obvious that if companies start realizing the solutions in the market, or they find ways, who doesn't want to work with new robotics? That would be one of the most exciting jobs you could find if you're a university graduate, or even not, out of high school, and you're hearing about a construction company using a robot to do X, Y, or Z, that's one of the most exciting jobs that you could find. A great example of it is 3D printing. I was in touch very closely with a lot of the 3D printing companies in their early years, and you could see some of the most brilliant people in the world, PhD guys who'd never get close to the industry, dive heads on into this, and they just want to be part of it. People want to be part of change and something exciting, and the construction industry has endless exciting things just around the corner. I think that this is a great opportunity for construction companies to attract a lot of talent by enticing them and showing them, hey, we're actually doing something. You could be part of something amazing, something new, and be handy and create buildings and infrastructure and have that satisfaction of, I built that. So would you agree with that? I'm just like, for me,
I 100% agree.
yeah. And I think this is what's so exciting about what you guys are doing, that you guys are playing such a significant role in funding a lot of these early ideas and also facilitating these opportunities for startups to meet construction groups and get opportunities to grow. So I think you guys are doing an amazing job, and I'm honored that I had the opportunity to have you on the podcast.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you for helping spread the good energy on construction tech. And you're also building up a network of folks and trying to make those connections. So we need more of you, and we need more people investing in this space.
I'm excited, and thank you so much for sharing the insights. Thanks.
Thank you.